When I go to eWaste, sometimes it rains and sometimes it pours. Well, on this particular occasion, it was a downpour. So I'm going to go through everything I found at eWaste. We'll test some things out, do some quick fixes. Some of them will work and some of them will fail. That's all coming up right now on Retro Hack Shack After Hours. Well, hello everybody and welcome back to Retro Hack Shack After Hours, my second channel. If you found this video because you were just watching my twin tower video that I did before where one of them blew up, or the power supply blew up on me when I was working on it, thank you for watching that video. I hope you liked it. I'll have more like that coming up. But today is an episode of eWaste Wednesday. That's where I go to eWaste typically on Wednesday, and I find some things and bring them back and talk about them on the channel. Sometimes we do a quick test, sometimes we do a full repair. Today is one of those days where, boy, I just kept finding things every place I went and every place I looked. Sometimes I'll get maybe a couple floppy drives or a cable or two that I'm looking for, but today is just one of those days where the e-waste gods were, I guess, smiling on me or whatever. So I'm going to try to go through some of the things I got today, and then I will tell you the price I paid for them. And instead of doing it at the very end of the video, I think I will do it after each product that we talk about. I'll just put the price on the screen and then we'll go on to the next one. And by the way, this is going to be a little bit of a longer video, so please use the chapter feature. I put it in all my videos, and you can skip through some of these items that may not be of particular interest to you. And this is the first thing I wanted to talk about, and this thing is huge. If it sounds like I'm out of breath, that's because I am, because this thing is super, super heavy. But a couple of things today, and this is one of them. As I was trying to leave eWaste, people kept dropping things off as I was standing there waiting to leave, and I saw them drop it off and I couldn't believe that it was there. And this is one of those things, and I'll show you another one later on. But this, to me, what got me interested in this thing is, number one, these displays, right? So there's a CRT screen, I assume, over on this side, and this humongous gauge. I mean, look at this analog meter that's over here. This thing is, you know, as big as my hand. It is so huge. I need something for scale here. This is the meter that I've been using lately. I did a video on this on the main channel, but yeah, this thing is absolutely ginormous. Anyway, what caught my eye immediately with this thing was over here, because we have ranges in the kilovolt range, but also the kilovolt range is typically what you would find for a CRT. And so what I was thinking at first is maybe this is a fancy professional CRT tester tuner kind of thing. And maybe I can make some cables and hook it up to CRTs that I'm working on. And wow, wouldn't that be cool? So I didn't even really look at it that closely. I just picked it up and put it in the car, paid for it, and was one of the last things that I picked up, actually. But what I did not realize, I should have looked a little bit closer, because there are other things that run in the kilovolt range, and there's also other things that have 4 cylinders, 6 cylinders, and 8 cylinders, and there's other things that have ignition besides CRTs. So what I found out when I got home is that this is a Heathkit ignition analyzer for automobiles. So you would plug this thing into your car. I'm assuming you would plug it into maybe the battery and the distributor or something like that, and then, you know, do your settings here and start this thing up, and it would give you some information about what was going on and let you diagnose why the ignition wasn't working or why it wasn't working as efficiently as it should, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with CRTs, but these gauges are still really cool. So even though I'm a bit disappointed that it's not a fancy schmancy CRT tester, which I really could have used, I still am going to hang on to it, and I'm going to bring it probably down to my makerspace and see if anybody has a use for this. This thing was put out in the mid 80s. I'll put a little advertisement I found for it up on the screen here so you can see. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't super expensive for test equipment at the time, I don't think. I just love the look of it. I love the fact that it's got these colorful buttons and the gauges and the blue case of it, and the fact that it was made by Heathkit. Of course, there were also Heathkit computers. So yeah, I wish this was something else that I could really get a good use out of, but I'm not sure I can. If you have an idea of what I could do with this blue behemoth with these huge gauges and CRT tubes and all this kind of stuff in it, let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested to get an idea. Perhaps we can turn this into some sort of a project. I would plug it in and just show you how it works, but unfortunately, like with most e-waste gear, by the time I got to it, they had already cut the power cord off and put it in their copper scrap pile. So it's probably not worth it for me to go in and replace that cable, especially since I know it's not exactly what I was looking for. And we've got a lot of other things to cover today. This is just the beginning. So what did I pay for this? I paid a grand total of $10. That's right, just $10 for this big honkin' beast. If you know or have any ideas what I could do with it that's maybe vintage computer related, let me know in the comments below. All right, well, next up we have something that is much easier to lift up here on the desk here. It is an AKAI tape player, dual tape mechanism. Pretty simple, looks like the mid 80s to me. And this looks like something that would fit into a hi-fi rack, you know, a rack of things, because there's no speakers built in, of course. There's outputs on the back and inputs for you to be able to record and play things with. It does have a dubbing mode. And I don't know if you guys remember, you know, these kind of decks back in the day would have high-speed dubbing, and this does. It has 2x dubbing speed, so that was really nice when you were making copies of tapes for friends. It does have Dolby noise reduction, so I believe this supports Dolby B. And it has this huge volume slider, and that's about it. No equalizer, no auto reverse, I don't believe. Record over here, play over here, but I still really like the styling of this thing. It's simple, it's basic, but it looks like it did the job back in the day. So let's go ahead. I mean, what are the chances this is going to work without needing belts? I don't know, probably pretty small, and it is awfully dirty, but that's okay. That can be cleaned up pretty easily. Let's go ahead and plug this in and see if it will actually work. Now, I can test things down at eWaste. I can actually, they have a little bench there. I can plug things in and see if they power up. Basically, there's not a lot of tools or anything, but this is something, if I had more time and wanted to, I would have plugged it in just to see if things were working, but I still would have bought it anyway, because I can do a video on this where I show how to change the belts and things like that. Oh, also there is a tape in here as well. And this is Phil Drummond, Control with No Money Down. I don't know what this is. It says National Institute of Financial Planning. So I'm guessing this is probably an instructional kind of thing that is not going to get me into too much copyright problems. So we can use this for testing. And according to this website, Hi-Fi Engine, this particular tape deck came out somewhere around 1986 or 1987. Okay, well, I've got this thing hooked up. Let's go ahead and turn the power on and see what happens. Okay. Oh, that's a problem. So the motor is moving over here, but I don't have play engaged. So now I've got play on. Stop. No. This is just always on this side. So there's something wrong with the stop mechanism over here. Maybe some plastic has broken off. Over here on this side, if we hit play, nice. Yeah, so this is working, and there's pretty good resistance over there. So I don't think this thing actually needs new belts at all. But what I'm worried about is, why is this thing constantly on? Okay, well, let's go ahead and put this tape in. Hit the dubbing. Let's rewind it here. I'm going to turn this down because it sounds pretty loud. It sounds like it's going to blow me out of the water. Oh, and it has auto shut off. So I hit reverse, waited a little bit, and it shut itself off. So that's really nice too. Okay, let's see if we can see what this sounds like.
But one of the things that I think is so great about this business of creative type real estate, or whatever you want to call it, of all the places I've gone around the country and speaking and whatnot, I've found that people that are involved in this are the most generous people I've ever met as far as sharing with one another. Isn't that good? Haven't you found that some of the best tips that you have learned were not necessarily in a seminar session?
Okay, let's stop it there. I don't know what this guy's going on about. Oh man, the 80s were kind of wild for this ridiculous stuff. But anyway, yeah, so it is working, but only if I turn on the dubbing feature. So if I turn the dubbing feature off, then nothing is being shown. If I turn the dubbing feature on...
And I want you to know you're not alone, because a lot of people are willing to share.
If we hit the double speed button...
But I want you to know that these feelings that you have, these fears you mentioned, these doubts, these apprehensions, are not unique to you. I'm sorry to tell you that. But they are not. They are the same.
We indeed do get double speed. Let me turn that off. That's super annoying, that dude. Okay, so this actually sounds really good. Fidelity sounds good. Granted, it's just over this cheap speaker, but this little speaker actually does a pretty good job, I found. It was a cheap one on, one of those, like now it's Temu or Hello or whatever. Got this on there. It's a Bluetooth speaker, but it actually does have pretty good quality. So yeah, this is actually sounding really good, but for whatever reason, this side is permanently on, so that will have to be a repair. I also really like, let me go ahead and turn this down.
When I first got started.
Oh, I can't turn that down when it's on dubbing. The stupid side is stuck.
Probably none of you here can identify with this, but
yeah, I'm just going to unplug that for now. But I do love also the LED indicators here, how they're just the styling of them. They start green and then they go into the red up here. I don't know. I just really like the styling of this thing. Super simple, no frills, but it sounds actually really good. Let me do a direct capture with another audio tape with some music on it so you can see what this thing sounds like when it's not coming out of this little speaker here. There you go. You can see I was starting to clean it up already. This is going to make an interesting repair video, and I think this will make a really good quality deck for somebody. So let me go handheld here for just a second and show you that this thing actually has a motorized mechanism. So it's not just the force of the button that's moving the mechanism, but when I press the button for play, for example, go ahead and turn this on. If I hit the button for play over here, you'll see down in there that the mechanism moves up via a motorized mechanism. So here we go. So you can see I press the button and that activates a motor, which then engages the mechanism up there to start playing the tape. So that's pretty cool, I will say. Where's stop here? Yeah, so stop just brings it down, but play, you hit it and then it engages like that. So I think this is actually a pretty good quality player, and I'm really excited about it. So now the question is, how much did I pay for this? Well, for this particular thing that was dropped off, again, at the end of the day when I was leaving, another time I had to go back and pay for something else. But this player only cost me $5 at eWay. So I'll do a repair video on this and we'll see how it turns out. But the fact that it doesn't need any belts and the audio actually sounds really, really good on this thing, I think this is going to make somebody a very nice cassette player to add to their collection. There's another really interesting piece of audio kit coming up next, but before I get to that, I want to thank today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay offers low-cost, high-quality PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. They offer flexible and rigid-flexible PCBs. They offer surface mount assembly. They offer high-density PCBs with up to 60 layers. They offer aluminum PCBs, and they also offer custom metal and plastic parts that need to be CNC milled or 3D printed. One of my favorite features on PCBWay's website is their project page, where the community can upload projects. You can browse these and order these particular parts so that you can use them yourself. Or you can create your own project by uploading your design and receive 10% back when someone else orders your particular project. So check out PCBWay for all your PCB manufacturing needs, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Up next, we have this Media Vision media kit, multimedia kit that I found. Again, as I was leaving, a couple of these things caught my attention, and this is one of them. This is what would have been a high-end multimedia kit at the time that CD-ROMs probably were just coming out and speakers were just getting a little bit more advanced, and you wanted to have something that was a little bit high-end, maybe had some MIDI capabilities and things. And this was a kit that was sold, I think, around the mid-90s. To test this, I can use the cassette deck that we just looked at. But this thing is quite a beast. Luckily, when I reached inside to pull this out, I happened to see a 16-bit ISA card that I just happened to grab because I thought it was probably a video card or something. And I'm really glad I did, because this is actually required to run this bit of kit. This is a custom card from MediaVision that is required to run the gear here. And the reason I say it's required, this thing actually has not only a MIDI/joystick port right here coming out of it, but it also has this very unique connector. This is a DB44 D-sub connector that's on this card. And what I didn't see when I picked all this stuff up out of the e-waste bin was I didn't see the cable, but luckily I was able to order. You can still buy, believe it or not, this 44-pin D-sub connector. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't that expensive either. So hopefully in an upcoming episode, can actually try this out and connect it to a computer and see how it works. So taking a closer look at this thing, there is a power on and off button right here. There is a line in and headphone jack right here on the front. I'm guessing this would be used like you would set up your monitor would sit on top of this thing and your desktop computer would be underneath your table or something like this. You'll also notice that these aren't just any old speakers. This system actually has the Bose logo, very high end. It's got a row of buttons here across the top, and it has a volume knob right here, which is missing, but the potentiometer is still sticking out. So, I can still turn up the volume here if I want to. Pump up the volume, pump up the volume, pump up the volume, dance, dance. So that's good, but maybe I can 3D print a replacement knob or find one online or something. Now there's also this little hatch here. When we open it up, we see we have access to a CD-ROM. So again, this probably would have been in the early days. If you didn't have a CD-ROM already, this thing would provide you one, which is pretty cool. Have to see if there's still perhaps a CD in there. I don't know. Taking a look at the back here, you can see there are some additional connections here. This is where the other side of that cable goes. That 44-pin DB44 cable goes here. We've got some MIDI in and outs here. We've got line in and outs here. And down here, it looks like a mic input is what that is. And then we have the power over here and the speakers connect here. And you can see they have long cables. And that is because you could actually detach these speakers. I don't really want to do it right now, but I believe, yeah, you can actually go ahead and detach those speakers. And I think some models even had a stand that you could set the speakers in individually. So just like those bookshelf all-in-one systems that were popular back in this day when you had your record player, maybe CD player, cassette player, all in like a bookshelf system, and you could separate the speakers across the room to give you a little bit more stereo separation. You could do the same thing here. You could separate these speakers out as long as these cables would reach probably 5 or 6 feet if you wanted to around your room, and then you would have a little bit better stereo separation. This thing does take DC 12 volts here. There's the input right there, but luckily it is just a standard barrel jack. So I have plenty of those around. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up to some audio, power it up, and see what it sounds like. All right, I've got these things connected. First, let's just hit the power button, make sure it powers on. Okay, it did power on, and I heard the CD make a noise. Ooh. Yeah. Oh, I see. It's actually, it looks like it's a caddy system, and either the caddy is jammed in there or... Ooh. Yeah, that is not a good sound. So I'm going to have to work on that a little bit, but let's see what happens if we try to play some music here from the cassette deck to this thing. Let's see if we get any sound. While we're waiting for that, there are buttons on the top for play, skip, stop, and go back, or previous. That's what these little purple buttons are here at the top. Should be hearing some music. I'm not hearing anything. I wonder if there is a software select for the input on this thing so that we're not going to be able to get the line in working unless we hook this thing up to a computer. That would be a bummer. Let's try the line in jack. Music is definitely playing, but I'm not hearing anything out of the speakers. So yeah, unfortunately, that's as far as I can get today. If you want to see a full episode about the history of the MediaVision multimedia kit and get it up and running with a period appropriate PC that would make this thing work, hopefully, let me know. Now, what did I pay for this? Well, the cost of this multimedia kit was $10 at eWaste. So if this thing is working and it works well, I think I will have ended up with a really nice find just in this one component at eWaste. All right, well, now we are on from the audio enthusiast section of what I found at eWaste this week and on to something for the vintage computer enthusiast. And yeah, this was a big surprise to see. I don't often see these. It is an IBM 5170. That would be the PC-AT, the third in the line that IBM put out of the personal computer line, of course. And it also came with these keyboards. So I was excited enough to see the IBM PC here, but it also came with what appears to be not only a brand new or almost brand new keyboard, I'll show you this in a minute, but it also came with this. Now, they were trying to tell me, which I knew this wasn't true, that this keyboard went with this system. And, well, it might have been, but I doubt it. That's because there were several versions of this particular keyboard, and it is a beauty. It's the one that you may have seen with all of the function keys on the top. But what you'll notice if you look closely at this thing is that those aren't function keys at all. They are command keys. And also looking at some of the other function keys over here, you'll notice that, for example, this one says field. So that's a little bit different. And this one over here says roll and rule and roll. So what's going on here? Well, this isn't, in fact, a keyboard that would have went with this personal computer. This is a keyboard that would have went with an IBM 3970 terminal. So this is a terminal keyboard. However, it is, in the style of it, is built very much like a Model F. It is extremely heavy. It probably has a metal plate down in here, just like the Model F does, and the older style Model Ms. It does have buckling springs on it as well. And but the keyboard layout itself is just a little bit different. Now, I did a little bit of research online, and I found that you can actually convert this to work with a PC, but you have to do a little bit of work with the signaling. And if you, of course, if you want all of the function keys to be labeled correctly, you'll have to get replacement keycaps, which you can still get, by the way. So, and I have some of those in stock, so I may go ahead and switch those out so that this can be fully compatible and make sense for people to use with an IBM PC if that's possible. So I could do a video just on that, how to get this thing to work. And I think that would be a lot of fun for people. And there's the part number, serial number for those playing along at home. So that was a real winner just for this keyboard, obviously. This other keyboard, though, as I mentioned, it has this plastic cover on it, and it does look like it's basically, you know, stock or new in box. It looks like this was set up somewhere. This is covered with dust, but the rest of the keyboard is absolutely unbelievably mint condition. I mean, it looks like these keys have never been typed on. It's a beautiful keyboard. If we take a look at the back, you'll see that this was manufactured by Monterey International Corporation. Never heard of them, but there's the model number. It's K104, so probably an earlier keyboard. And what I love about this one is it does have the ability to switch right here between AT mode, XT mode, and S, whatever S is. Could that be like a serial mode or something? I don't know. If you know at home what the S would be here, let me know. But there's a switch right back here, as there is with most keyboards that came out around this time, to switch between AT, XT, and in this case, whatever that S stands for. And just so you get an idea, these keys are very clicky and nice to use. Just take a listen to these. It certainly sounds like some sort of clicky Alps key switches. Let's just, oh, it is. It's the Alps white, what are they, NKS or something like that. I'll put it up on the screen. I forget the exact model number, but that's exactly what those are. These are my absolute favorite key switches. Oh, and this thing is like butter to type on. Absolutely awesome find. Looks like it's never been used, and I can't wait to try this out on some systems as I'm doing some testing, trying, and repairing. But now let's turn our attention to this machine. There's two floppy drives here. Hopefully it's very, very heavy. So I'm assuming there's a hard drive on this side, but one of these is labeled 360K. So we know we have an older drive here. Perhaps this one is a 1.2, but we can find that out in just a minute. All right, well, I got this thing opened up. If you're not familiar with the 5170, they had this protective shield, which made the back kind of look a little bit cleaner. If this was on top of your desk with a monitor on top and a keyboard in front, you know, the back was a little bit ugly, I will admit. And I guess they thought this was a good idea to put these little shields back here to make everything look nice and tidy. And it just holds on with some Velcro. You can see the Velcro along the top and bottom here. And now we get our first look in the back of the machine here. And yep, right here, you may not be able to see it from your angle, but that is the IBM badge I was looking for before, and it was hidden underneath that cover. It looks like it's all original IBM stuff and in very, very good shape. In terms of cards, there is an internal hard drive card. There is a full height hard drive over here as I expected. But yeah, here's a full size, looks like an MFM type controller. We've got an IO card here that has a COM port and a parallel port on it. Over here, interestingly enough, we have a couple of things. So internally, there's a RAM expansion card, and it has one bank filled. It has 4 banks, it looks like. One bank is filled all the way across. I'll show you that in more detail in just a second. And then on the very end here, there's a CGA card. I can tell that just because it's got a 9-pin connector on it, and it has these 2 auxiliary RCA jacks that I don't know if they were ever used really, but the cards I have, I think that they were primarily not used at all. But that's the way I can always tell if that's CGA. And then here looks like a joystick port perhaps, but it has a dip switch. So this is the one that I do want to get out and see what it is. And here's that card. You can see right through it. Actually, there's so much light in the room these days with my new LED lights. You can see right through it. It's a 2-layer board, but this is made by Kraft Systems. And Kraft did make joysticks, not Kraft the food company, but there was a joystick or a peripherals company out there, I believe, named Kraft, and I think they made joysticks. So it makes sense that this would be a joystick card. Why it needs dip switches, though, I'm not sure. Perhaps this was the early days of PC joysticks, but yep, that's what that card is. And taking a look inside of this thing now, it is super clean. Look at the top of those floppy drives, not a speck of dust to be found anywhere. And just look inside of this thing, man. It is just about spotless. Full complement of memory up there, as I can see on the motherboard. There's a better look at that memory card there. Man, this thing is just absolutely spotless. The outside of the case, you know, needs a little bit of cleaning, but the inside is in great shape. I often, when I find computers that are this vintage, inside they'll be full of cobwebs and dust and all sorts of things, sometimes rodent pee and whatnot. So yeah, this is just looking really, really nice. What do you say we just try to turn it on? Let's test for shorts first. I'll test for shorts. If there's no shorts, I'll get out a monitor. We'll just turn it on and see if it works. Wouldn't that be awesome? All right, well, most of the rails seem fine. The 5-volt rail is a little low, but it is charging up like it's charging a big capacitor or something like that. So I'm not too concerned about that. 12 volts, you know, again, charges right up. I believe that's either the -5 or -10. That charges right up. I think it's probably the -12. And then the white connection here is the only one that's a bit problematic. 7 ohms, and it's staying low. So I'm just a little bit hesitant about that line. I think it's okay, but I think what I'm going to do is disconnect the motherboard and hook up a load and power this thing up and just check all the voltages to make sure they're okay and make sure that nothing actually, it really is short-circuited. And by the way, there is a battery in here. So 4.5 volts alkaline battery. Super lucky that that thing did not leak all over the place because it is alkaline, and anything alkaline is likely to leak over time. We'll put a CR, maybe a couple of either 1 or 2 CR 2032s in there instead. So on the motherboard, looking at that same line, I do not have a short on it. So let's just check on the power supply side. Yeah, and we're back to that 7 ohms there. So again, not sure if that's a problem. I'll use this drive here as a load. We'll see if that spins up since it'll be attached, but that'll provide plenty of load to start the power supply, and we'll be able to test these voltages with the power supply running. Okay, here we go. A little leery of power supplies after that one exploded on me. Let's see what happens. Okay, power's in. Let's turn it on. Yep, there goes the big honking full height hard drive. And I can feel the fan really pumping it out at me here. So now let's just take a look at the voltages and see what they are. Okay, we've got 5 volts on the 5 volt rail. Here's this white one, negative 5 volts. That looks okay. Yep, there's the negative 12, negative 11.7. That's fine. This should be the opposite of that, and it is 11.7. And yeah, 5 volt again on this side, of course. And the final one there, the power good. 5 volts. All the rails on this are good, and there's no shorts and no shorts on the motherboard. I think we can plug this in, hook up a monitor, and see if it boots up. Now, as I said, this thing is in great shape internally. Looks like a little bit of rust here, or it could just be, you know, I don't know, somebody spilled some Coke on top. I'm just going to go ahead and hit this with some Windex and give it a little scrub. I can see a lot of the markings from the feet on the bottom of the monitors here. And yeah, that is not Coke. That is definitely rust, except for the little monitor foot marks here. The rest of this that is orange is definitely rust. So that is definitely a project for another day. All right, well, I don't have a CGA monitor, but I do have an EGA monitor, and that should work just as well in this circumstance. So let's go ahead and turn that on, and let's hit that big clunking switch and see what happens. Okay, the monitor's on. I don't hear anything coming from the computer side of things. So, all right, well, yeah, when I take the power connection off the motherboard, the drives power up. And when I have the power supply connected to the motherboard, it doesn't do anything. So I do want to take a look at these voltages, especially the power good signal. See, I know I was getting 5 volts there before. Aha, and now I'm getting nothing. There is definitely something going on that is shutting the power supply down immediately. All right, well, this thing is so close to working, I feel like. I was going to take a break, and I was like, nah, let's just keep working on it. Now, even though there's no dead shorts right now, there is, for example, let's see, am I on resistance mode? Let's see, here's the 5 volt rail, for example. Okay, so it's not dead, and it is going up, and it's at 20 ohms. And I've seen power supplies like that work fine, right? And if we look at the negative 5, 7 ohms again, we saw that before when the motherboard was disconnected. And the negative 12, yeah, it's going up hundreds of ohms, and the same thing with the 12 volt rail, it's going up hundreds of ohms. Power good. 14 kilo ohms. So yeah, I mean, at the power connector, everything looks pretty good. But when I look at the tantalums in here, there are a lot of tantalums on a 5170. And when I look at that, look what happens. Almost a dead short on the tantalums, but it doesn't register on the power connectors. I'm surprised. I would have thought that that would have registered for sure. Okay, so these capacitors, now that I can get in here with the cards out, these tanths are 3-legged, which means they have both of the outside legs are either going to be positive or negative, and the inside is going to be the opposite. So I thought I was clever here in measuring this thing, but I was connecting to the outside legs which should be nearly a direct short anyway. And if I get in here and measure between the outside and that third inner leg, you can see that the resistance is going up as expected. So those tantalums are okay. Well, I do have all the cards removed now, so why don't I just go ahead and plug this back in and see if it boots up. All the cards are removed. The keyboard is also removed. Let's go ahead and see if the power supply comes on at all now. Yes, it does. It does come on. Okay, so one of these cards is not happy for some reason. I'm just going to go ahead and plug in these cards one at a time until something fails. So I'm going to start with the MFM card, work my way backwards. Aha. Okay. MFM card. Bad MFM card. Let's go ahead and take this out and plug in all the other cards and see if it's working. And sure enough, it does appear to be booting with all the other cards in place, but this MFM card out. So let's take out this MFM card, see if there's something easy to troubleshoot on it, or if I need to replace it with another one. All right, well, I have checked this card individually for shorts, and there are no shorts on this card. So something obviously has gone wrong. Maybe it's holding the address or the data lines low or high or something. I don't know. Something on this card has gone wrong and caused the power supply to go into safety shutdown mode. You can see there's quite a few bodge wires here, but I bet that's probably from the factory. So, 1983 fixed disk, floppy diskette card. Let me see if I have something that could potentially replace this. All right, well, I pulled this bad boy out of here to see what kind of drive it is, and it is actually an original IBM drive. Those last letters are the important, last numbers rather, on this number here are the important ones, 0665-30. So that tells me that this is a Type 2 drive from IBM, and I'm hoping that I can get a Western Digital controller to run this. I know in the XT class machines, that's a big no-no because the controller cards for that were programmed specifically for specific types of drives. But I noticed on this controller card that there were a lot of Western Digital chips on it from the 80s, 83, I think, on this one as well, if I'm reading that correctly, upside down. And this card is from 1985. So we'll have to see if it'll work for this. I think there's a configuration utility when I boot this up that I can go in and tell it what type this is on a 5170. I would really love to get the data off this drive if it's intact, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why this card is not allowing the system to boot up. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this out. We'll get these cables connected, get the monitor back up, and just see what happens. All right, here we go. Keyboard's back on, monitor's back on. Let's flip the switch. I hear it booting up, so that's a good sign. Not booting up, but fans are running. Hard disk is coming up. It's counting the memory. Awesome. So we got a full 1 meg of memory in here. Okay, systems options not set, run setup. Let's go ahead and hit F1 and see what happens, and it drops into basic. So this system is absolutely running. Let's put a boot disk in here and see if it'll boot into DOS. Okay, it sounds like it's reading the disk. There we go. DOS 3.31 up and running. And we can go into the B drive and just see if that's working. There it is. That is working fine. That's the DOS 5.0 setup disk. So I could not find my cleaning disk, but I haven't needed it so far. I will go in and clean those drives at some point. But so far, this is working great. Now all I have to do, see if I can find the setup disk and see if I can select that drive. All right, well, in order to attempt to get this Western Digital card to recognize and access the hard drive, I'm going to have to get into the setup for the 5170. So that means two things. One is we have to replace the battery. And what I've done here, I think I showed this actually in my other 5170 video, the full length one that was just about the 5170, where I created a, use this little two CR2032 disc thing. You put 2 of them in there, you get basically a 6+ volt battery out of it, which will replace the 4.5 one in here, which should be totally fine. And I took the female header off of that other battery and just spliced it in here and put some heat shrinking there on the wires to protect them. And I'll put a little Velcro here that will Velcro to exactly where that battery was in the back of the case. And then we will have battery power. The nice thing about this is it does have an on-off switch here. So when I'm done with this, if I don't want to keep it powered on, I can just turn this off and save the battery life on this from constantly being on. So that's really nice. I've also gone ahead and found my XT to IDE adapter here with the CF card in it, and I've transferred both the 5170 IBM setup and diagnostics disk over to this, as well as the G setup program. Those are 2 ways that you can actually configure the BIOS when you do eventually run out of battery or need to reconfigure it. And that's where we should be able to tell the BIOS that we have this Type 2 disk drive in here. And with any luck, we'll be able to read it at that point. Okay, I've got the XT to IDE card installed and the battery installed. So we should tell in just a second if this is going to boot from the XT to IDE. F1 to resume. There we go. XT to IDE is booting up. Well, that's weird. It really does not want to boot from the C drive. It looks like it is. It found the CF card, but for some reason it's hanging on boot right there. I haven't seen that before. Okay, so the XT to IDE isn't working, and it may be a conflict with the card and the drive that is installed here. That's why it's not booting correctly. I seem to remember either in one of my videos or one of Adrian's videos that there's another couple of different ways to get around this problem. One is to install an updated BIOS in this machine, which I'd like to keep this stock if possible. The other thing I could do, since the floppy drives are working, is I could just not even do the XT to IDE card. I could actually pull up another computer down here that I use that has all of my floppy drives in it, and I could actually write the G setup files that I need to this floppy disk and then just run the G setup from this floppy disk. So I think that's what I'm going to try to do. Okay, I think I've got my files on floppy drive now that I need. All right, I'm going to be using the instructions off the -0 degrees website. They have a whole instruction list here for using G setup to do this, so that's what I'm going to do. First thing we need to do is run mem setup, or mem size, so let's do that. Okay, and it tells us there's 640K of base memory and 384K of extended memory. So you got to remember those, 640 and 384. Now I think we can run G setup. There we go. And we want to set up the CMOS RAM parameters and set up the floppy drives. And then it says hard disk type. That's what we need. And we need to select type 2. That should be right. And then it's detecting, or it's asking for a second hard drive, which we don't have. So we'll set this to 0. Let's see. It's 157. Yoy. And then enter the date, month, day, and year. And we'll say it's 1984 or 1985. That should work. And then let's see, base memory 640, and expanded memory or expansion memory. This is supposed to be 384, but there's no way to actually put in. It goes from 347 to 475, so we'll just do 347, I guess. Math coprocessor is not installed, and primary display is, let's do color 80 column. I don't think it's going to be number 4 here, so let's do color 80 column and exit. Does that automatically save it? Press any key to reboot the system. Okay. Let's see what happens. Maybe it'll see the C drive and it'll just boot up off the C drive. Let's see. It's thinking about it. Oh, it still says system options not set. Why? Wait a second. Hard drive is active. Hey, look, this is actually running. So it still thinks there's something not set in the CMOS, but this is running EGA device driver, even though it's got CGA in there, which is really weird. And it's starting up MS-DOS 5. I don't want shell, but that's okay. It's running. It's got a mouse driver loaded. Oh, look at this. It's working. It's working. Wow. Wow, look at this. This thing is working. While we're in the shell, you can take a look and see what's on this thing. There's Lotus 123, some batch files, DOS itself, some games. Ooh, we're going to have to check out these games. I see Mahjong, girl.dat, wheels.dat, interesting. Let's see, the latest one that I see from here is 1997. We've got Jeopardy, chess, Carmen. Is that Carmen Sandiego? Yeah, this looks like Carmen Sandiego to me. Now, I don't have a sound card hooked up to this, so we're just going to have to take a look. There we go. Is this Carmen Sandiego? Yep, looks like it. Broaderbund Software presents. Yes. Where in time is Carmen Sandiego? So this is the sequel. Wow, cool. Look at those CGA graphics. Somewhere in San Francisco. Where? Where? Personnel. Well, it's about time you got here. You better sign in before the chief has a fit. If you're not on the roster, you're in the wrong location. Applicants must see Diane in Personnel Department. Agents should select the proper floor and go there at once. Oh, welcome. I'm Diane, the head of personnel here at AKAI. I'm sure you'll find your assignments here exciting, interesting, and very dangerous. Here's your portable chrono skimmer, Time Cadet Aaron. Good luck and good hunting. How cool is that? System check complete. All spatial and temporal diagnostics are valid. No anomalies found. Equipment is safe for use. Oh, and here's my, we've intercepted a patrol crime alert. I might just go ahead and play this thing, but I've got one more thing to show. Okay, so I need to tell you how much this costs. Now, the monitor is mine. I grabbed it from the shelf over there, but I picked up the 5170 and the two keyboards for $40. That's right, $40, and they basically work out of the box. Once I replaced the battery, and I did have to replace the hard drive controller and had to go in and run G-Setup and all that to get it working. But that's not too bad for $40 to have basically a working 5170. That is awesome. I think in the future I'll have to do some repair and maybe some repainting of this top part of the case here where that rust is. And so maybe that would be an episode. And getting that really cool keyboard to work, the one with all the function keys, getting that to work on AT system with a conversion might be a fun episode as well. But like I said, there's one more thing I have to show you, and then we're going to call this particular eWaste Wednesday episode done. So hang on 1 second, and I will be right back. All right, and here we go. Here is the last thing I found on my Wednesday trip. This is a TRS-80 Model 4. So this is one of the later TRS-80s that came out. It looks like all the keys are basically here. It's got this glass, tempered glass. It feels like it doesn't even feel like plastic. It really feels like glass. That's been affixed to the CRT, and there's also this thumb or a wrist rest thing that has been glued on to the front. Don't believe that was stock. That was aftermarket, but it does fit perfectly on here. And if you know the TRS-80 line, I don't know about the 4 here, but the ones that are silver colored, often you'll find them with discoloration here along the front of the keyboard because people would put their wrist here as they typed, and that would lead to the paint coming off. But this one has some sort of a wrist rest on here. It does have 2 floppy drives, no discs in them, but there they are. And yeah, that's it. I found this on a pallet, and this is the way that this particular eWaste place does their organization is they put CRTs on one pallet, and usually they put the CRTs facing down. But when I walked up, I saw this weird looking thing, and it didn't look like a CRT. And sure enough, when I went over there and looked down, this is what I saw, was this TRS-80 Model 4 just sitting there. And I could not believe that this was just sitting there among the CRTs on that pallet. So I think we should just go for broke and try this one out. If it doesn't work, I'm probably not going to do big long repair like I did on the 5170 just now. Now, I don't remember on the switch which way is on and which way is off. The switch is underneath the keyboard here. I'm just going to leave it the way it was, but this could be on. So when I plug this thing in, it may just come on. It may blow up. Let's just see what happens. Oh, I think this thing didn't have a jack on the back for the power. It actually had an integrated cord because there's a cord back here and it is indeed cut off. What a bummer. You know what? Shoot. I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and take the time. I'm trying to keep this video short, but I'll cut this thing right in the middle, cut out all the details, but I'll go ahead and put a power cord on there so we can just see if this thing is working. All right, well, I'm here on the inside. I've got the monitor off. When you take the top part of these off, I know this was true of my TRS-80 Model 3 that I took off. The CRT is going to stay attached to this top part. So when you take it off, it's a bit heavy. Not only that, the way you get it off is you go up and you flip it over like this to the left as you're looking at the keyboard here. And that should allow you to set the monitor piece on its side like this. And luckily with the 4, I don't believe this was true on my 3, but the 4 actually has a plug back here, a plug connector. It looks like, yeah, that's a card edge connector. So I can just take that right off like that. Now there's just a ground connection here that I can take off, and then this whole CRT can be removed out of the way because this is so big, and that'll allow me to get in here and work a little bit. Also, as I'm looking at this, there are a few reefas here, and the reefa that I can see looks like it's in pretty good shape. There's a reefa right there. It doesn't look cracked or anything, so, you know, we might get lucky here and just be able to leave that in for now, but eventually that reefa will have to come out because it will eventually lose the magic smoke. And there's a lot of different stamps in here as well. This one is stamped March 29th, 1984. What a good year. And there's also a lot of other stamps as this thing went through assembly. There's one that says TCA Assembly Proud, another one that says TCA Base and Proud. And then there was another one, I think, on the bottom of this that said TCA Burn-In and Proud. So, you know, as it went through the different stages, apparently they would put their stamp on here just to say that it had gone through that stage already. So that's kind of cool. Okay, I've got a new power cord on there, and I've done some shrink wrapping back there just to make sure everything stays safe. I've got the wires hooked up temporarily because I think what I want to do is put a socket back there so that the cord is not constantly dangling off and getting stuck and having people trip over it. So I've got the CRT off still. I want to be able to have a good look at the power supply just in case something does go wrong. I can at least narrow down to perhaps a particular part of the power supply board for troubleshooting. So it goes without saying, or it actually doesn't go without saying, I'm saying it right now, please don't operate this way if you don't know about working with CRTs. There's a lot of high voltage, so take caution. Don't do this kind of thing if you are not used to working inside units with live CRTs, because very high voltages and can deliver a very, very nasty shock. So if you don't know what you're doing, ask for help before you attempt something like this. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I believe the switch is off because on the bottom side I could see where where it was off and where it was on. I could see which direction it was. And that switch does switch both the neutral and the load, which are different colors, by the way. They're brown and blue, and ground is green with a stripe. So I had to look that one up to see which way that went with hot and neutral. But here we go. I should be able to plug this in and nothing should happen when I do. Let's see what happens here. Okay, all plugged in, not seeing any problems. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and I'll try to get out of the way so you can see what happens, if anything. Here we go. Okay, well that's a good sign, I think. The floppy drive spun like it was trying to find a disk to boot off of. The CRT is actually coming up, and I can see a raster, folks. So I think somebody dropped this thing off. There you go. Maybe you can see now the bright green. So I have a feeling that maybe somebody dropped this thing off and it was completely good and working. Trying to remember my TRS-80 now. Is it shift and reboot? Well, that'll get me to a prompt. No, it's break, right? Break. Okay, I'm not seeing anything yet. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Right down here. You're not going to be able to see it, but it says cassette, cassette. So if I hit enter, it'll tell me memory size, and it does. And if I hit enter again, it should go ahead. Yes, Tandy Radio Shack Model 3 Basic. 1980 Tandy ready. So yet again, another perfectly good working vintage computer that somebody dropped off, and for whatever reason, they didn't know what they had. They didn't want it. Maybe it wasn't as desirable to them as it is to me and to perhaps all of you watching. But yeah, perfectly good unit, dropped off at eWaste. They cut the cord on this thing. It would have been shredded. And luckily I was able to save this thing. Let me turn it off, get the top put back on, and I'll see if I have a disk that I can pull out that we can load on this thing just before we wrap up here. Well, if I sound deflated, it's not just because I'm deflated. It's because the CRT tube is now deflated, or I guess inflated, since it had a vacuum. When I was putting this back on, the neck board got tangled up on something back here, and I thought I was being very careful, but I heard a very nasty hiss coming out of the CRT, and sure enough, there is now a crack in the back of the CRT. So now I need to find a new CRT. I am very disappointed in myself. I guess it's a word of warning for everybody else to, when you're putting these things back together, and I've done it before, this isn't the first one I've done, be careful of the neck of the CRT, because it can get hung up and crack like it did on me. And now I need to find a new CRT tube. That is so disappointing. Man. Well, that's the end of the video. You know, I was going to end this thing with, oh, isn't that great? I found all this stuff at eWaste, and it is great, right? I mean, everything else is working. I can find another CRT and put it in here. That'll be a fun project to do, I guess, on the channel, but that's super disappointing. So I'll try to be positive right now. Found great deals at eWaste. One of the most awesome single days at eWaste ever, as you can tell. This thing cost me $25 at eWaste. And so obviously I was super excited to see it working. And I broke it. It was my fault. Super upset at myself. Be careful what you're doing, folks, because you get good deals and then you immediately break a CRT. Go ahead, leave the comments down below. I know I'm going to get creamed for this one, but yeah, like I said, word of warning, be careful when you're putting these things back together. Not much room in the back there. All right, well, I'm going to put the grand total on the screen. I'm so disappointed in myself right now, I can't even add numbers. So this is how much I paid for everything at eWaste. I got all this stuff. Fantastic deals, and I know a lot of you don't have access to eWaste places like I do. I know I'm very fortunate. I wish everybody would be able to get their eWaste places in their states to operate the way they do here in California, or at least the way they do here in the Bay Area, so that you can get a hold of this stuff. It was a great day until just now when I busted that CRT. Oh well, another project to feature on the channel. I'm sure this happens to more people than just me, so perhaps me showing you how to replace the CRT on a TRS-80 Model 4 like this will help people who have done the same stupid thing that I just did. Actually, one more quick thing I was thinking, if you could leave in the comments below, how should I fix this? Should I put a CRT in here, or should I hook up a flat screen and use RGB to HDMI to, in some ways, improve upon this thing by eliminating that problem that I just had? If it's just a LCD screen and a RGB to HDMI device, that's going to save a lot of space in here, and I won't run into that problem again by mistake. Let me know what you would pick below. Once someone votes for one of those options, I guess upvote their what they said, upvote their comment, and instead of leaving your own, and that'll give me a running total for if you think I should find a new CRT and install that, or modify this with RGB to HDMI and an LCD display and do it that way. Let me know in the comments below. So with that, guys, thank you for watching. Sign up on Patreon. Be sure to like and subscribe. I know I don't say that enough anymore, but I hate saying it, so I don't. But it really does help the channel. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
End of line.